But if the very thing you are most proud of is the thing that's quietly destroying you, you've been taught since childhood that loyalty is sacred, that standing by people no matter what makes you strong, that walking away is weakness. You were praised when you stayed silent, rewarded when you stayed committed even when it hurt, so you kept giving. You kept showing up, you kept shrinking. Somewhere along the line, being loyal stopped being a choice, it became a prison. A chain disguised as virtue. You didn't notice it at first because it was dressed in the language of honor. But deep inside, there's a voice screaming that something doesn't feel right. A heavy pressure in your chest that builds every time you betray yourself just to stay loyal. You tell yourself you're doing the right thing. If you're honest, completely honest, you know you're fading. You know you're losing pieces of yourself, one silent compromise at a time. The truth is hard to face, because if loyalty isn't the virtue you believed it was, then who are you? What was it all for? But here's the wake-up call. You were never wrong for caring. You were wrong for thinking your worth depended on your ability to endure. Loyalty, when misused, becomes self-abandonment. It turns your strength into a tool that others use against you. And the more you convince yourself that suffering makes you noble, the more you'll be surrounded by people who benefit from your silence. But that ends now, because there is a version of you that doesn't flinch when it's time to walk away. Version of you that refuses to be guilted into staying places that drain your energy, your dignity, your power. That version of you is not heartless. It's healed. It doesn't act from fear, but from clarity. It doesn't cling to the past. It creates the future. And that future begins when you stop romanticizing loyalty and start honoring truth. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose. You're allowed to choose yourself, even if it shocks the world around you. Stay with this message until the end, because what's coming next will shatter the lie you've lived under. It will open your eyes to the subtle ways loyalty is used to control you, manipulate you, and trap you in cycles of pain you didn't sign up for. If you've ever felt invisible despite how much you give, if you've ever felt guilty just for wanting to breathe, then this is your turning point. You don't need permission to change. You need the truth to wake up. And once you see clearly, there's no going back. Your loyalty should never cost your soul. And when you finally understand that, you don't just protect your life, you reclaim it. Keep listening. The freedom you've been too loyal to claim is already waiting. Loyalty means nothing when it's not mutual. It becomes a weapon. The people who understand power the best, they know this. They know that the most loyal person in the room is the easiest one to control, because you won't question, you won't challenge, you won't leave. You'll justify their neglect. You'll excuse their disrespect. You'll twist your own boundaries into knots just to keep peace they keep breaking. That's not strength. That's programming. And if you don't wake up to it, you'll spend your entire life being applauded for your pain, while those you serve climb higher on the back of your silence. You were never supposed to stay loyal to someone who wouldn't even flinch at the thought of losing you. You were never meant to keep pouring into something that never fills you back up. But loyalty tricks you. It wraps itself in identity. You begin to believe that walking away makes you fake, makes you weak, makes you cold. But that's the lie. The truth is, loyalty without limits is not a virtue. It's emotional slavery. It turns your compassion into compliance, your kindness into currency. And the people who don't love you, who only love what you do for them, will drain you until you are unrecognizable to yourself. It's time to ask the harder questions. Who benefits from your loyalty? Who takes and takes, knowing you won't stop giving? Who continues to mistreat you, confident that you'll always be there anyway? If you disappeared tomorrow, who would feel your absence and who would simply replace you? These answers aren't comfortable, but they are necessary, because you can't change what you won't confront. You can't free yourself from a system you still believe is noble. And make no mistake, when you see the truth, it will hurt. It'll feel like betrayal, but it's not betrayal. It's rebirth. The death of a version of you that was never allowed to choose yourself. You don't have to keep proving your worth by how much you can endure. You prove your worth by refusing to stay in spaces where you're not valued, where your presence is expected but not appreciated, where your pain is overlooked and your silence is mistaken for agreement. That ends now. You owe yourself more than loyalty to broken systems. You owe yourself truth, clarity, freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you realize you don't need anyone's permission to stop sacrificing yourself. You are not here to be used. You are not here to be everyone's solution at the cost of your own peace. Let this be the shift, not out of bitterness, but from power. Let this be the moment where you stop apologizing for choosing yourself. You were never weak for being loyal, but now you must be strong enough to stop. Because the moment you do, the entire game changes. And finally, you begin living on your own terms. Loyalty becomes toxic the moment it blinds you. It silences your instincts. It tells you to stay even when everything inside you is screaming to go. You start convincing yourself that leaving means failure, that setting boundaries means betrayal. You shrink to maintain peace. You swallow your voice to avoid conflict. You bury your needs so others can feel comfortable. And then you wonder why you feel so hollow, so tired, so invisible. This is the hidden cost of loyalty that no one talks about: self-erasure. And if you don't confront it, it becomes your identity. You start to believe your pain is the price for being a good, that your worth lies in how much you can take. But that belief is poison. It convinces you that suffering is noble, that devotion means silence, that love means enduring disrespect. And every time you let it slide, every time you make excuses, you reinforce a cycle that steals from you. It steals your time, your energy, your fire. And worst of all, it steals your power to choose. Because loyalty doesn't ask questions. It just obeys. It just stays, even when staying is the slowest form of dying. The mind adapts to pain when it's constant. You stop noticing how much you're bleeding. You call it normal. You call it love. But that's not love. That's conditioning. That's trauma disguised as loyalty. And it's not your job to stay loyal to people, places, or beliefs that only exist to keep you small. Growth demands disloyalty to comfort, to patterns, to anything that feeds on your silence. Because real power doesn't come from how long you can endure. It comes from knowing when to walk away, when to say no, when to say enough. You are not born to be someone's emotional insurance policy. You are not here to be their backup plan, their outlet, their easy yes. You are here to build a life that reflects your worth, not your wounds. And that begins when you stop asking who you might disappoint and start asking who you become when you finally choose yourself. Loyalty can't be unconditional when respect is not. Commitment means nothing when it's not mutual. And giving your all to someone who doesn't value you isn't strength, it's self-neglect. So take your power back, not through revenge, not through resentment, but through truth. Through the unshakable decision that you no longer owe your loyalty to anything that requires your silence in return. You are not hard to love. You're just done being convenient. You're not broken, you're awakening. And every time you honor your voice, your worth, your boundaries, you teach the world how to treat you. That is real loyalty. Loyalty to your truth. Loyalty to your future. Loyalty to the person you were always meant to become. And once you choose that, everything changes. Permanently. People don't respect what they can predict. And nothing is more predictable than someone who never leaves, no matter how they're treated. That's what loyalty does when it's not earned. It makes you easy to use, easy to ignore, easy to manipulate. Because once they know you'll always stay, they stop showing up, they stop trying, they stop valuing you. Why would they change when your loyalty guarantees their comfort? Why would they take accountability when your silence covers their mistakes? The world doesn't give extra credit for how long you stay. It only takes more from those who never say no. The longer you remain loyal in the wrong places, the more invisible you become. People don't see your sacrifices. They expect them. They don't thank you for your patience. They feel entitled to it. And when you finally hit your breaking point, they don't feel guilt. They feel confusion. Because you train them to believe that no matter what they did, you'd stay. That's what misplaced loyalty does. It teaches others how to disrespect you with your permission. It shows them your limits can be ignored. It tells them your love is unconditional, even when it hurts you. But love isn't unconditional when it costs your identity. Respect isn't real when it only exists in words. And loyalty isn't noble when it demands your silence in the face of pain. You are not being strong by staying loyal to something that's slowly killing your spirit. You're being conditioned, and if you don't interrupt that pattern, it becomes your life. A life filled with one-sided relationships, one-way loyalty, endless giving with no return. That's not your purpose. That's not your destiny. That's a system built on your silence. and it only works as long as you obey. You were meant for more. More than being the one who always understands. More than being the one who's always there. More than being the one who's always forgiving while no one forgives you. There is power in your absence. There is strength in your silence when it comes from clarity, not compliance. And there is transformation in the moment you decide that you no longer owe your energy to people who drain it. That decision isn't cold. It's clean. It's not heartless. It's healing. The moment you stop showing up for people who would never do the same for you is the moment your life begins to shift. The moment you walk away, not to prove a point, but to protect your peace, is the moment your power becomes undeniable. Loyalty to others has its limits. But loyalty to your truth, your growth, your self-respect, that must be unshakable. Because the people who deserve you will never require your pain to prove your love. And the ones who do, they were never worthy of your loyalty to begin with. There's a breaking point inside every loyal person that no one sees coming. You hold it in for years. You give chances that aren't deserved. You stay silent when you should speak. You forgive what should never have happened, and all the while they think you're fine. They think you'll always be there, because that's what you've trained them to believe, until something inside you snaps, not loudly, quietly, a deep, calm realization that you're done, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. That moment is powerful, because it's not driven by anger, it's driven by clarity. You don't owe explanations. You don't need to scream. You don't need to make them understand. You simply withdraw the energy they never valued. You walk away from the role you never agreed to play. And in doing so, you reclaim the one thing that was always yours, but you gave it away too freely, your peace. Loyalty to others is easy when it's reciprocated. But what happens when it's not? When your presence is expected, not appreciated, when your love is consumed but never returned. That's when loyalty becomes a prison. You stay because you remember how it used to be, because you hope it will change, because you're afraid of being alone. But the truth is, being alone is 1,000 times more peaceful than being surrounded by people who make you feel unseen, unheard, unimportant. You don't lose people when you set boundaries. You lose the ones who are only attached to your lack of them. It's time to stop romanticizing pain. To stop calling dysfunction loyalty, to stop carrying relationships on your back while pretending it's normal. You deserve to be poured into. You deserve to be met halfway. You deserve a life where you are not constantly proving your worth. Where you can breathe without explaining. Where you can be yourself without fear of punishment. That life begins the moment you stop making excuses for why you're staying and start telling yourself the truth about why you need to leave. This is not weakness. This is evolution. Choosing yourself after years of self-neglect isn't selfish. It's survival. It's not bitterness. It's wisdom. You've been taught to give without limits, to stay loyal no matter what. But now you know better. You know that love without respect is manipulation. That connection without reciprocity is emptiness. That loyalty without boundaries is slow self-destruction. And you're done participating in your own pain. So let them be confused. Let them call you changed. Let them wonder why the old you isn't answering, because the old you is gone. Buried beneath all the times you bit your tongue, held back your tears, and accepted less. What rises now is someone they never expected, someone who finally remembers their worth. And once you taste that kind of freedom, no amount of guilt can drag you back. They will tell you that walking away makes you heartless, that setting boundaries makes you selfish, that protecting your energy means you've changed. And they'll be right. You have changed. You've stopped begging to be seen. You've stopped proving your worth. You've stopped bleeding for people who would never offer you a bandage. The change they're talking about isn't arrogance. It's awakening. The moment you stopped defining your character by how much you could endure was the moment you stepped into a higher version of yourself. And not everyone will celebrate that version, because the version of you that tolerated everything served their comfort. This one doesn't. When you finally decide to be loyal to your truth instead of other people's expectations, something profound happens. The guilt fades, the noise quiets. The shame that once made you doubt yourself turns into fuel, and the weight that sat on your chest for years starts to lift. Because you're no longer carrying what was never yours. You're no longer apologizing for wanting more than bare minimum respect. And the fear that used to hold you hostage, of fear of being alone, misunderstood, unloved, loses its grip the moment you choose peace over performance. You don't need to keep explaining why you outgrew who you used to be. Growth doesn't require permission. It requires courage. And there is no courage greater than choosing yourself after years of abandonment. Not from others, but from you. Every time you said yes when you meant no. Every time you smiled when you were breaking. Every time you stayed when your soul was begging you to leave. Oh, that's the betrayal that hurts the most, the one you committed against yourself. But the beauty is this: self-betrayal is not permanent. It can be rewritten, it can be replaced with self-respect, with self-trust, with decisions that reflect your worth, not your wounds. You don't owe loyalty to the version of you that tolerated disrespect just to feel loved. That version was doing the best it could with what it knew, but now you know better, and knowing better means doing better. Loyalty is not about how much pain you can hold. It's about how much peace you're willing to demand, how much truth you're willing to live, how much love you're willing to give yourself before offering it to anyone else. The world may never applaud your decision to leave behind what broke you, but your soul will. Every boundary you set, every toxic tie you cut, every time you choose silence over chaos and distance over disrespect, you come home to yourself. You stop surviving and start living, not for approval, not for validation, but for truth, for alignment, for freedom. That is where your power lives, not in being loyal to others, but in being loyal to yourself. Because once you fully commit to that, nothing and no one can take your peace again. You can't heal in the same environment that made you sick, and you can't grow in the same mindset that told you loyalty was more important than self-respect. If you want peace, you have to stop choosing war just to keep other people comfortable. You have to stop calling it love when it's really fear. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of being alone. Fear of no longer being needed. But here's the truth. If your presence is only valuable when you're convenient, then it was never love to begin with. It was dependence. And dependence disguised as loyalty will always keep you small. Every time you silence yourself to avoid conflict, you invite a war within. Every time you betray your values to preserve a bond, you fracture your relationship with yourself. And that's the most damaging loyalty of all, the one that keeps you loyal to your own self-abandonment. You were not created to be a placeholder. You were not born to live life walking on eggshells, trying to earn the respect you should never have to beg for. If being loyal requires you to abandon your needs, your truth, your growth, then it is not loyalty, it is submission. And submission will never give you the life your soul came here to build. You are not responsible for managing other people's comfort at the expense of your own. You are not obligated to stay where you are unseen, unheard, or unvalued. The most powerful thing you can do is recognize when your loyalty is being used as leverage, and instead of justifying it, detach from it. Cut the cord. Step back, not to punish, but to protect. Not to hurt them, but to save yourself. That moment of separation is not weakness. It is a declaration. A bold, unapologetic statement that you are done handing your power to people who never earned it. True loyalty starts within. When you stop betraying yourself for the sake of others. When you stop playing small just to keep the peace. When you stop sacrificing your worth just to feel wanted, and it will feel uncomfortable at first because you're breaking a cycle you've lived in for years. You're pulling yourself out of emotional quicksand, but discomfort is the price of freedom. And on the other side of that discomfort is something extraordinary: clarity, confidence, control. Not control over others, but control over your own energy, your own time, your own life. There is no crown in being the most loyal to people who would never carry your name with the same care. Let them call you selfish. Let them label you difficult. Because while they talk, you'll rise. While they judge, you'll heal. While they cling to the version of you they could manipulate, you'll become the version of you they'll never touch again. And in that quiet, fearless decision, you will remember who you are. Not what they needed you to be, but who you were always meant to become. You don't need to explain why you stopped showing up for people who never noticed when you were breaking. You don't need to defend your distance, your silence, your growth. Not everyone is meant to understand the version of you that chooses peace over people-pleasing. You've spent enough time being loyal to your own exhaustion. Now it's time to be loyal to your healing. And the kind of healing that requires separation. The kind that forces you to let go of roles you never asked for. The kind that doesn't beg for validation, but walks away because silence speaks louder than 1,000 apologies. There's nothing noble about staying in places where your presence is abused and your absence goes unnoticed. Nothing brave about sacrificing your potential to keep the broken systems around you intact. You are not the glue. You are not the fixer. It means being seen, valued, respected. And if those things are missing, so is the foundation. You are not breaking a promise by choosing yourself. You're breaking a pattern. You're refusing to carry the emotional weight that was never yours to bear. And that is not betrayal. That is responsibility. To your future, to your purpose, to your power. Let them call it cold. Let them say you changed. Growth always looks like betrayal to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. But you weren't created to live a life of quiet desperation, chained to people who only clap when you're convenient. You were made to evolve, to rise, to lead. And you can't lead while being dragged by the expectations of people who refuse to grow. This is your permission to detach, not out of hate, but out of deep, unshakable self-respect. When you stop being loyal to roles that suffocate you, you step into a different kind of strength. A quiet power, a grounded presence, a life that no longer revolves around proving, pleasing, or pretending. You no longer beg to be chosen. You choose yourself, fully, fiercely, without apology. That is the loyalty that matters. Not to broken people or broken promises, but to your evolution, to the fire in your chest that knows you were made for more. And once you give that fire permission to burn, everything that was built on your silence crumbles. Not to destroy you, but to rebuild you.